Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you ever wanted more peace and harmony in your life, then do we have the Deep Listening Show for you. Today I'll be talking with Jillian Pransky, mindfulness, yoga and meditation teacher, recovering overstrider, and the author of a beautiful new book on softening and healing your heart, Deep Listening. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about a healing practice to calm your body, clear your mind, and open your heart. That, plus we'll talk about princesses and dragons, waves and water, leaving without umbrellas, monks and hugging bushes, ow, and what in the world a Muppet-like dog named Sunday has to do with anything. Gotcha. So welcome to the show, Jillian. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready.
Woohoo!
Woo!
So before we dive right into things, I'm wondering if we can go back to your early childhood. Were you always driven?
I was always driven. Yeah. I had a lot of energy. I was born ready to go. I was always curious. I have a strong body. I have just a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. So it's really easy to get caught up in being driven.
And you grew up in a family of boys, if I understand.
I did, yes. And boys who bring more boys home and lots of boy goals, sports, and all sorts of accomplishments. Yeah.
So you're big into accomplishments at the time. In fact, your dad probably affected how much you wanted to accomplish.
That's right. I had a lot of enthusiasm, and it was easy for me to be energetic and to set goals and to achieve goals. But what was most rewarding about it was trying to get the accolades or the approval of my dad.
And so you went along as a striver in childhood, and this seemed like kind of a harbinger, a small harbinger of things to come. What happened to your health at 12?
At 12, well, I got mono, and actually, believe it or not, it was monohepatitis, so it had that liver component to it that made it more of a concern than just getting some rest and reorienting. So I had to go to the doctors every 2 weeks or sooner to get blood drawn, to look at my liver levels. And you really did read my book thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Because when I was 12 and when I was sick, going to the doctor all the time and getting the needles, I have really small veins, and I built up a relationship with whoever was taking my blood. It was a very confrontational relationship. They didn't like working with me. I didn't like getting my blood taken. My body didn't like giving blood, and it became a huge source of anxiety and fear for me.
So we might as well go there. I want to go back into your history in a minute, but now when you give blood many, many years later, after a positive experience of understanding, well, you teach the breath, but really understanding how important the breath is, how is it when you give blood now?
Okay, so the truth is,
yes,
it is still incredibly anxiety-provoking, and I don't like anything about it. But I am completely aware. I mean, I do a whole prep. I shake my arms. I do jumping jacks. I do deep breaths. I drink a lot of water. And I'm aware and humored as I'm giving blood. But my body still is not so fond of the experience. But my mind understands what's happening. And therefore, I can participate in a way that allows me to get a better outcome.
Woo!
Yeah.
Do you go for the friend factor, seeing how much, forgetting about the needle and seeing how much you can make friends with the phlebotomist?
Oh, okay. Yes, totally. You know, you've got my number. That's one of the first things I do is go in and have a conversation. I go in with a big smile. I explain to them with a lot of self-humor that I'm, somebody who needs a little hand-holding, and I definitely work on that friendship before the needle ever gets into my arm.
Very, very, very cool. So now if we go back to your story, to your earliest years, well first off, did you understand that monohepatitis might have been a sign that you like to hit the gas pedal too hard?
Not then. No, not at all.
So if we go back before then, to 9, you got introduced to yoga and TM pretty early.
Yeah, I did. My mom brought my family to TM from New Jersey. She would cart the five of us into New York City
Yeah.
to the center, the official first Transcendental Meditation Center. And it's not that we were an ideal candidate family for meditation. In fact, we were kind of an unlikely crew to go in. But it was the 70s and it was popular, and she was hearing how it was working for, I guess, some of her friends. And my mom and dad had a tremendous amount of daily confrontation. And that really characterized my home life, was the way that they were in conflict with each other all the time. And one of the ways that they were trying to work it out, my mother gave my father a ultimatum that it was either marriage counseling or TM for the family. And at that point, TM won, and we all went in and did a week or more of lessons and initiations. We went in several times, and we all got our mantras and our official entrance into the TM lineage.
And you still use the mantra today?
I do. You want to know? You want to know a secret?
Sure.
So I have a brother who's 18 months older than me. I have two brothers, and one of them is 18 months older than me. And for years, we sort of teased each other, because you're not supposed to tell anybody your mantra. And we teased each other for years about our mantra. And it turns out when we were like 35 and 36 or so, maybe a little older, we told each other, and all those years we had the same mantra.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So if we go forward in your life, we're going to kind of fast forward to your adult life. How'd you get into marketing?
Well, that was right up my energy alley. I went away to college. I went to Syracuse, and I was involved in I graduated the communications school, and I left with big ideas about how I was going to be in something related to television, radio, and film. And I did. I wound up in a publishing house in a marketing division, and sort of tied together all my skills. And it fit the vision of my enthusiastic young 20-year-old and teenage person about how I wanted to be in media. And I did love it. I loved actually everything about my job. It fit a lot of the checklist points of what I thought I should be doing, and how I saw myself being successful in the world.
So, and then during that time, you had an interesting, my wife Jessica and I, we wrote Barefoot Running many years ago. And so I found it fascinating, your approach to get into running.
Yes. I was always an athlete. So I should also say I was an athlete from the time, I guess 9 years old on. And I wound up playing collegiate soccer. So I truly loved using my body and being in my body, mostly to feel strong and just physical. I liked being physical. But I was never really much of a runner, even though I was a soccer player. I was a fullback, so I was strong defense, but not necessarily the goal scorer. I ran a 5K race in May, and it was so much fun. I mean, it was
without training.
That I ran without training. And I truly just enjoyed myself so much. And when I finished, somebody who was also celebrating with me just said, "You should run the marathon." And so I said, "Okay." And a few months later, I found myself running the marathon.
And that was a little challenging on the body.
Afterwards. And I think that I use the power of mind over matter, which has many merits. But and even in my initial launch into yoga and meditation, I loved the teachers who talked about how much the mind was in charge of everything. But I eventually had to use my mind to acknowledge my body, and I had to use my mind eventually to learn to listen and love and incorporate all of the experiences of my body instead of just tell my body what to do. And I think I ran the marathon because I was ambitious and enthusiastic and passionate, and I let all of the fervor of my ability to overpower myself and over muscle and just get things done, that's the me who ran the race and then left when they crossed the finish line. And the me who was destroyed and carried myself over the finish line showed up and said, when are you going to ask me what I need? When are you going to ask me what I would like to do? And I really need a rest, and I really need to be heard and cared for and loved. And all of a sudden, my body began to talk to my mind, and my mind was like, oh, you're down there. And we had a big meeting, and started to get much more intimate with myself in a whole new way.
So the next year it sounds like you had mono again. Your body is saying, we're going to have a year-long powwow now.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I'm not sure the timeline, but your husband Brad came into the picture, and you had your baby, and after this, you started having seizures as well.
That's right. That's right. In between those two huge life events. So those were two huge bookmarks. The first and the most major, last to date. And in between that, I lost my sister-in-law in between those two events. And those were the sort of three huge markers in my adult trajectory of growing to be more intimate with myself, for healing and for uncovering layers and layers that I need to grow more aware of. So the first was running the marathon, and it took me a true year to recuperate from that. I then felt that I recuperated in a lot of ways, and I still don't think I really learned the lesson of mind over matter. I think I was still using my will to navigate through a lot. And again, I do think that has a merit, but I think I really had to learn will in conjunction with there's also a greater energy that I need to be more in harmony with. And I learned that lesson. I was still working in marketing and still looking for athletic endeavors, although my yoga became a much bigger part of my life. My sister-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer, and she was young at that time. I was probably about 27 or 28, and she was a few years older than me. And her lung cancer was not from behavioral reasons. It was she was subject to environmental conditions. So she was truly a victim. And through her trajectory, she was given a short window to be on the planet, and she actually outlived that by quite a bit. And through that whole experience of her illness, I too began to really learn the lessons that there are so many things beyond our control. That came to a head when she died. And for my very first time, for somebody who could run a marathon with barely, go from 5 miles to a marathon and had already a directorship in marketing, I then at 30 had my very first panic attack and experienced anxiety. And before that, if someone asked me about anxiety and panic before that, I really would have said that, they need to think about things differently. I would have looked at it as you could choose to have a different attitude. You could choose something different. And I learned that there are not only a lot of things externally that are out of our control, but there's aspects of being in our body that we don't always have control over in the moment. And anxiety and panic was my first introduction to feeling completely out of control in my body. I was going to say something I don't wish upon anybody, but was a very important part of my evolution that I can't see having had missed out on now.
And it's fascinating because you were into yoga quite heavily at the time. How did your mindset shift after that first panic attack?
It took me a while to get my ground after that. So at first it was just absolutely 100% pure vulnerability. And I think I was subject to a tremendous amount of vulnerability before that, but I never allowed myself to feel it in this way. And feeling so out of control and feeling so vulnerable took me, I used a lot of different healing modalities to literally physically insulate myself, to return my awareness to the ground, to make a relationship with support, with the earth. I think I was so used to being in charge of everything that I had to grow aware of and allow into my life support that became for me first and foremost literally the natural environment around me, the floor, the ground, the earth, but others. I had to rely on others in a way that I never did before, and taking the support of healers and family members and people who could actually help me take care of myself was an incredible process.
What a beautiful, beautiful shift. That must have been scary, for lack of another term.
Yeah, it was incredibly scary. But, you know, when I remember sitting in my apartment and I remember thinking, I will never be myself again. I'll never be the same. I am now no longer who I knew myself to be. And I didn't feel that that was a good thing. I felt that I am now this vulnerable. I lost my competency. I lost my strength. I lost my will, everything. And I will say, on the other end of that, when I came out of it, not only was I not the person, I was right. I was not going to be the same. I was actually a more whole person, a more, a stronger person, because I learned how to be softer. I learned how to be vulnerable, and I learned how to relate to those parts of myself that I avoided so strongly. And I felt much more integrated, and also so much more available to other people's vulnerabilities, and so much more empathetic, and so much more passionate about being around other people when they were vulnerable. I didn't have to fix everybody and fix everything and make everything perfect and right. I could be in the messy stuff and know that that it was also okay.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
You were cracked open.
Yeah, I was. Yes.
We're writing a book right now. It's second book in the queue, but it's called The Open-Hearted Warrior. And it's about dropping your shields and stepping forward with your heart, coming out of your head into your heart, fully vulnerable to the world, but coming from that special place that you're talking about. And to me, there is no greater power than where you are now, which is that vulnerable place, which is that heart-forward place.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for people. First off, let's talk about relationships. So we're going to dive into your book here, and we're going to talk about your relationship to the ground. I've admitted my bias already, but what does it mean to you to feel grounded?
Well, for me, it's a real bodily thing. Nothing allows me to calm more than when I stop holding up my shoulders. And so I liken it like this. I notice that I hold my breath. 25 years later, I've been teaching yoga and doing yoga since 1994. I still several times a day today can notice that I'm holding my breath. And what I notice when I'm holding my breath is that I'm not feeling the ground underneath me. I'm not letting myself feel the support under my body. And when I return my weight, when I get out of my head and drop my shoulders and go down through my body and sense the earth underneath me, not only does it reconnect me to nature and to the planet, very literally, but I soften, my whole body softens, my shell softens, and my body's allowed to receive the breath. And so for me, grounded is so literal. It is feeling the support underneath me so that I relax, holding myself up and controlling. I make lots of room for the breath so it calms me, and then I feel more centered. And
Can I
that's,
pause you for a second?
yeah.
We'll go back to centered, but what does it mean for people to make lots of room for the breath?
Well, I could personally resist my breath by actually squeezing my body small. And what I mean by that is either hugging in towards my center, it's like a shield or an armor or just a tension. I could do it because my shoulders are in my ears. I could do it barely take a breath because I'm concentrating or trying to get something done or thinking so much. So making room for the breath is stopping my own limitation, my own restriction, my own holding of my body's freedom to be moved by the breath. So when I relax the way I'm holding my muscles together, my bones are more movable. The breath and the diaphragm moves more fully. My rib cage has freedom to expand and release. And when I'm relaxed, every bone in my body is moved by the breath. And so the breath is more free to come and go in its fullness. That calms my nervous system. That opens my mind. I'm more present and available. And so it becomes a grounded state of mind. But for me, it's also very somatic. It's very bodily. It's very physical.
Thank you. And I had stopped you right before you were saying centered, which you may have covered at this point. But you were saying that once you give room for the breath, and then you mentioned centered.
Yes. So we throw around this language as yoga teachers or as people who like to talk about being clear-minded about, I don't know, our life and our intention. And sometimes the language makes it seem like it's a mental state that we're present and we're centered and we're paying attention. But for me, I can't separate the body and mind. If I'm not in my body on the ground, and if my breath isn't flowing freely, I can't bring my present open awareness to what's in front of me. Being centered and present isn't a precision practice of attention for me. It allows me to be aware of what I'm doing and who I'm speaking with, but it's an openness that is inclusive of the whole moment. So I'll be aware of the quality of light or the sounds in the room or the energy between us. Like even you and I on a video screen, I can see that you've been practicing breathing, and I can see you dropping into your body as I was talking about it as an instruction cue. But I was watching as I'm speaking to you. Not only are you paying attention to me with your face, but you were doing in your body what I was speaking about. So when I am present that way, I can see what's happening in your body and in your face, which gives me so much more empathetic presence with you. So centered and grounded is all of that for me.
You literally use that. I think of when I go home to my parents, I love them so dearly. But as a child, friends wouldn't want to come over to the house because they'd call it the crazy house. and it really was. And so when I went home in later years, I learned that if I would go to my breath, I think it became, after I practiced for many years, it became just a natural thing of wanting to balance the energies in the house. When they're over the top, I go to my breath to slow things down and kind of be a tuning fork of a calmer frequency. You literally use this to save your son's life.
I did, yes. Yes. So my son was born anaphylactic to wheat and gluten. So he has life-threatening allergies. But we went away to the top of a mountain, Mohonk Mountain House in New Paltz, and it's way up on a hill. There's no medical care that is immediate other than the just the in-house doctor, but it's not set up for emergencies. And because he's had all these gluten allergies, I wasn't necessarily even attuned to environmental or seasonal allergies. So we went for a long hike in the woods during the day. And that night, he had this asthmatic attack that I wasn't expecting or prepared for and had no emergency care for. The long and the short of it is that he was having an asthma attack at about 1 o'clock in the night in a fog storm up on a mountain miles away from any kind of emergency services. He was wheezing, he couldn't breathe, and I began to panic. He was panicking, I was panicking, my husband was panicking, and the more short he was of breath and the more I panicked, the shorter the breath got for everybody. Remembering at some point along the way that I did have some tools. I wasn't sort of premeditated about it. I wasn't like, oh, I'm a yoga teacher. I know how to breathe. I can do this. But it was like a sixth sense kicked in. So what we do on the mat eventually does become second nature in the face of stress and danger. And it was probably very, very quickly that I realized I needed to breathe, and I grounded myself, I deepened my breath, and I got very close to him. In fact, in my book, I write about the fact that we were forehead to forehead, and I started my own breathing pattern. And we were just locked in each other's eyes, and he began breathing with me. And yeah, it was a really scary moment, but with all the best outcomes.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And you discuss in the beginning of the book, I wasn't planning on going there, but it's just too cool, and so might as well. You talk about, well, I had a Tibetan teacher years ago who talked about the way to make great change, as he would say, and the way to straighten bamboo is slowly, slowly. Very, very slowly, very incrementally. And you talked about how you worked with your son on this too. It's a life philosophy of yours, I believe now, but you had some success with your son in weed as well.
Yes. So I've come to, for me, everything is about step by step, layer by layer. And I think 25 years later, that is why I have been able to make great changes in my nervous system and in my body, the way I carry tension, and in the way I accept or don't accept the moments of my life. William, in a microcosm, is an illustration of this. So he was born anaphylactic to wheat and gluten, and because of this, he was accepted into a study, a national study. It's actually an international study to use oral immunization. He had to ingest in microscopic amounts exactly what would kill him. So, for instance, as a child, or from infancy until he was done with this test, if I had wheat on my lips and I kissed him, he would have stopped breathing. He would have had to go on oxygen and had all sorts of emergency medicine. And he did. We were in the hospital several times with a great fear for his life. Because of the severity of his allergy, he was accepted with 42 other humans into this program that was run by 5 teaching hospitals out of Mount Sinai. And it was the first ever of its kind. It was a research clinical study. So his success in this program will make it soon a protocol available to other people. So he was 11, 12, 13, a little younger than 11 when he was accepted into the program. And they had to induce an anaphylactic reaction in a hospital environment under all sorts of emergency care. They had to find out the exact grain, the exact milloscopic amount of gluten that he would react to. So they had to push him right over that edge. They did it like literally. So for instance, I think it's like, I forget even the numbers, but if there was a bite of bread that would have made him had an anaphylactic reaction, say that was 2,500 milligrams, He started at like 6 milligrams. So you could see the difference. 6. So they notched him down to 6, and every 2 weeks for 2 years, they notched him up so that his immune system would build just enough immunity, and then they'd push it just a teeny bit. There were times that he couldn't tolerate it, so they had to go back down, where his nervous system said, no, I'm not ready to acclimate. I'm not ready to accept that. And they'd go back down and they'd level out. And then when his system said, okay, they'd notch him up a little bit. And it took actually 3 years until his nervous system understood that it didn't have to react in the same way to wheat. And little by little, step by step, teeniest of increments, his body was able to accept the stressor of wheat and gluten, where now he might tell me about a donut he had yesterday.
Wow.
Today.
So first, you're the coolest mom for doing that. And the amount of fear, I know you wanted it because you were afraid for his life, and so that actually pushed you to do it. But the amount of fear when they're going to have to induce that shock the first time, that's bravery and faith. But then also, what an amazing metaphor for life.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And want to hear the interesting thing about it? That is the summary from it. First of all, it never stopped being scary. Like for those 3 years, and we all wanted to quit. My son wanted to quit. My husband wanted to quit. I went many times, and we kept going. We're all so grateful we kept going. But here's the interesting thing. Now if he stops exposing himself now to the wheat and gluten, he will lose his tolerance.
Wow.
So in order to stay growing and to stay tolerant, he has to continually expose himself to the challenge. And even though he now accepts it, if we stop challenging ourselves, I liken it to this, when I started doing yoga in 1994, in my mind, I really believed I was going to eventually graduate. And there was going to be this time in this place where I was going to be a better person, and my life was going to be perfect, and I was going to be a great yogi, and things were going to be really neat, and I was going to be all in the light. And and we are shining all the time, but we shine not only because there's light on us, we shine because we also use that to face what is challenging and dark and difficult. And using his real life circumstances is that if he takes that stimulus away, he actually will lose his ability to stay tolerant. And I think that's a great reminder of there's never going to be a place where all of a sudden we graduate and now this is our new norm. It's like we have to this is the path.
Use it or lose it.
That's right.
So I think too, people who, and it can be blown out in so many different directions, but people say, yeah, I used to meditate. I got that down.
Yep, exactly.
Let's talk about some more beautiful tools that you have in the book here. And first off, what's the 90-second rule?
Okay, so I got that from an amazing, I guess she's a teacher to me, and she's certainly moving around the world teaching. Her name is Jill Bolte Taylor. She, through her own understanding of the brain as a scientist, and she was already totally proficient, understood all the science of the brain, was moving around the country, so expertise in her field. She was getting brain donors to donate. So in the height of her expertise, she wound up having her own stroke. And because of her expertise, she was able to, both through the actual stroke itself, but mostly through her recovery, use her own stroke as an experiment of understanding all of the knowledge that she had accumulated of the brain. And she discovered quite a few things that are interesting to me as a meditator and as a yogi and as a human being. And one that is very helpful is that our thoughts produce an energy. our thoughts produce a compelling energy and feeling and emotion to them. And when our thought rises and falls, we tend to engage in a conversation with it. We have a thought about, so for instance, I write a lot in my book about my challenge in relationship with my father. And if I had a feeling or a thought about my father, it might trigger a whole storyline and a conversation that I've probably repeated, I don't even know how many times, that I start engaging with that thought. Well, Jill Bolte Taylor discovered that a thought is only an energy wave, a thought wave, and that if we don't dive into it and continue that conversation, it will rise and fall in a lifespan of 90 seconds. And that technically, if we watch our thoughts or allow them to come and go, just acknowledging them without interacting with them in a conversation, that they may continue to rise and fall and be very opposite from each other. And I found this to be very true. A lot of my students might talk about they're meditating and, they might go from, I have to go to the dry cleaner, to I can't believe what my child did this morning, to, oh no, I have to call back my brother, but I'm not going to call back my brother because I'm going to get into that conversation. And I can't believe it because when we were, and all of a sudden we're in all of this crazy dynamic, even unrelated thoughts. So the 90-second rule is a way that we can remind ourselves that our thoughts are not solid, that they may or may not even be true. They may be real, and they may feel real to us, but they may not hold real weight. And that if we let them rise and fall and watch them, that we will begin to develop a relationship with the way we feel about our thoughts, how they either make us open or close. And that information of knowing how we feel about our thoughts is what really will benefit us in the long run, so that we can be out in the world with our thoughts and be much more present instead of either following them, interacting with them, closing, hardening, etc.
Well, it's a very powerful idea that we are not the wave. And you put it to great use with your son. You describe in this chapter that with something called a do-over.
Do-over, yeah. You know what? We still use that. He's a teenager now, and he asks me to do over too.
Cool.
He's like, Mom, do you want a do-over? Yes, I do. But when he was really young and he had some behavior that triggered me, and I found myself reacting in a way that I wasn't so comfortable, if I took a breath and I gave him the opportunity also, would you like to do that again? Do you want to do over? We get into a do-over when both of us are sort of escalating and not interacting with our most thoughtful or wise selves. And it's forgiveness. A do-over is forgiveness all in one. It's forgiveness. It's a chance to take a new approach. It de-escalates the situation. I can't recommend a do-over enough.
No, I like it. And it's either Dr. Rick Hansen or Dr. Joe Dispenza who talks about when we have our amygdala hijacked. It's a perfect time to take a few breaths and have a do-over.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's hard to take a couple of breaths, and it also feels, sometimes when it comes up, if he asks me if I want to do over, I sort of get angry first. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I want to do over. It's like, I don't want to do over. And the more you practice, you can even see that reaction, and it makes it even more special when you find when you get grounded and take a breath all over again.
Cool. So let's go from there and talk more about, at this point, in a sense, when you're having that do-over, it's coming from a place of kindness and compassion, or at least you're somewhere inside of you, you're wanting to get to that place. Let's talk about listening, and what does it mean to listen with the heart?
I think two things. You just said a really important piece, and you said somewhere in there, there's a pull to know that there's a more compassionate or caring way. And I might back up and say this is one of the most important reasons to practice, because we don't always just unleash this warm, loving feeling towards all of the events in our lives, and especially not when we're being told we're wrong, or when someone's irritating us, or when we feel unheard or impatient, or whatever it might be. But the more we practice finding that heart space, that we might then do something mechanically at first, but it's pulled by this deeper feeling, or the heart then shows up after. So sometimes the heart leads, and sometimes we are mechanically making room for the heart to rise. But either way, it's in there. So listening with the heart for me was, I really discovered it not only through journaling, and I think the heart was in my journaling at a very young age. I had this pull to write. I didn't write very kind things about myself as a really young person, but out of nowhere, I can remember looking at my journal and writing "I love you" like to myself, and it surprising me, like it just would come out. And as I would write something like this, I started noticing this warm place. So that was one place it showed up, was just through journaling. But then I discovered a metta practice as I got, a little older. Yeah. And that was really, truly how I understood how much my heart wanted to be, wanted the space to not only connect and be present, but how much I wanted to lead from that place. But a metta practice, which, in case people don't know it who are listening, it's truly a methodical way of uncovering this aspect of compassion and loving kindness. And it was very easy for me. It's an affirmism practice, a visualization practice. And you start by visualizing different people, including yourself. So someone you love, a friend, someone you're neutral towards, someone you have difficulty towards, all humans, yourself. And you practice saying phrases with different images of different people. It was very easy to do this for loved ones. It was easy to do it for friends. It was naturally difficult to do it for people who I felt difficulty with. But I was blown away by how hard it was to do for myself. And that was the moment that I didn't know I was deficient in self-love. I don't even want to use the word deficient, but I didn't know that that I needed this practice. I didn't know that I needed this connection. I didn't know I didn't have this sense of acceptance and love that was possible until I did that practice. And I was asked to sort of sit with a mental image of myself and look myself in the eye and offer myself these wishes of love. And I remember feeling paralyzed, like literally paralyzed. Like words wouldn't come out of my imaginary head, of my imagination to myself. It was such a huge, huge and special moment that it then became my primary practice.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And it's something that seems to come up in threes. And I've been telling people on another couple shows that these things come up in threes. And I'm like, I'm not sure where the third one is yet. I wasn't going to go there, but it is really important. The importance for you, at least. But it's an exercise in each chapter of the book of journaling.
Yes. Yes. So one of the things I really set out to do in the book was I offered several practices at the end of each chapter that work so beautifully when they're integrated and experienced as a whole. But I also offered them because some people are going to be drawn to more things of the mind. Some people are going to be drawn to more things of the body. Some people may like just to contemplate, some people to write. So I tried to also offer a diversity that if anything was appealing, you could try any one of these practices and it would be useful. But what I find is that when we do practices of the body to release tension and open up, when we feel more breath and more ease in our body, when we allow the breath to come and go on its own, when the mind becomes more quiet, and then we have an opportunity to journal, that it's as if a teacher is coming through me. It's not premeditated writing. It's not me telling myself what I want to write, but it's as if I'm discovering my own wisdom as my pen is moving on the page. And often it's a loving wisdom. It's a caring wisdom. It's a very wise, intuitive voice that comes out that points me back to self-love and self-acceptance.
Beautiful. And on that note, you ask yourself some important questions. One of the questions that you share with people in this book is, how do you feel right now?
Yes. That question became definitely part of it's part of my yoga practice, my meditation practice, and my moment-to-moment day. I feel that if we don't know what we feel in our bodies, it's very hard to interact from a place of the heart, because, I might show up and I might be able to be very courteous. I might be able to be very attentive. But if my body's really tight, or if I'm reacting and holding my breath, even though I'm being curious and attentive, something's missing. I'm not really making a connection. I don't know why I'm shutting down. I don't know what's really happening in that moment that I'm bringing to that connection. And finding out how I feel is very helpful in not only becoming present and making a connection with others, but making all of my choices about what I'm going to go towards or what I might move away from. And if I don't know how I feel, it's very hard to make wise, caring, kind choices for myself and for other people.
It kind of brings it back full circle to getting yourself back into yourself and back into your body and grounded.
Yes. I know a lot of successful people. I know a lot of people who may make good choices for other people, or seemingly good choices on the way they do things for other people, but they're not also paying attention to how they feel. And when you don't know how you feel, or you're not also paying attention to how you feel, you don't have access to your deepest guidance and wisdom.
I never thought about it this way, but I'm listening to your conversation. I'm checking in with my body. I thought of the practice my wife and I had, and I'm like, wow, we've got a digital dashboard up there. It's like driving the car and you don't know how you feel. You don't even realize when your tach is in the red line and you're about to blow your motor.
That's right. That's right. And that's a big part of that do-over, going back to the do-over. A lot of those, actually, I would say close to 100% of the time, those do-overs happen while we're engaging without also noticing how we feel. We escalate because we don't know how we feel. And the good news is, because we practice so much, we have learned to feel that we've gotten out of control. We have learned to feel that we've escalated. We've learned to notice all the signs that this is not going to go in a good direction. And that's when the do-over happens. So, we have to learn to feel when we're escalating. We also need to recognize when we feel good about something. As humans, sometimes we get really good shutting out what feels warm and wonderful and loving. We resist love. We resist letting in those warmer feelings as much as we resist or escalate, and swing on the other side.
So I'm very curious, when it comes to resistance, when it comes to feeling, when it comes to taking action based on what you're feeling, can you share with us real briefly the story of how your husband, Brad, threw you out of the nest and onto the path to publish Deep Listening?
Yeah. Wow. You really read even my acknowledgments. I'm so impressed. I have long thought that I might write a book because I journaled for so long. I write a blog for so many years. I'm a yoga teacher and a mindfulness teacher who's always looking at how to offer ideas and information. I've been so self-reflective in my own journey. So it just felt like I wanted to write that down and offer it in a medium. And in all these years of wanting to write a book, I sort of sat down many times with the intention, maybe started working on a proposal or this, that, and the other thing. And one day, my husband came home and said, I just gave $500 to a dear friend as a Kickstarter to open a bookstore. And that put me in the level to get a consultation with a literary agent. And I did that not only because I really love my friend who's opening a bookstore, but it's really time that you stop talking about this book you're going to write and you go talk to a literary agent and you ask them about it. And so he literally bought me an appointment to go talk to someone. The funny thing is I didn't go. And I sat on it for a really long time. And when I finally decided to go, which was months and months later, and I reached out, everybody forgot who I was and what I won. And I wound up showing up. I got passed to this person and passed to that person. And I eventually got at the desk of somebody who I was able to ask, I have these 3 ideas and I don't know where to put my energy. And which one do you think would be worth my time? And that was what the meeting was supposed to be about. And I left with an agent. I left that meeting with an agent, unexpected and not any intention of beginning that process. And that became the moment that I got an agent and then wrote a proposal. And door after door opened. And you want to hear another amazing piece of this is that you know that I used to be in publishing. Well, once I got my agent and we developed a proposal and I wound up selling the book and I sold it to Rodale, not remembering or knowing that when Rodale and I finally signed a contract, after that contract was signed, I discovered that the exact same sales force that I was part of, that I was the marketing team part of, was going to be selling my book.
You can't come up with this stuff.
You can't come up with this stuff. So he was the one who got me into that office to begin with. And one thing led to another, and every door that needed to open opened.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's
awesome.
right.
So let's go from there real briefly. I want to take off my coaching hat. I want to put it on you today. I don't want people just listening to the show and getting the warm and fuzzy. I want them to have a homework assignment they can leave with. What one homework assignment would you give people today?
How about I do something really easy and walk them through a 3-breath pause, a 3-breath visualization and meditation that you can use anywhere, anytime, no matter what your practice is.
Sounds perfect.
And I'll do one of my favorites for grounding. So this one is what I call the sand timer. And you could imagine the way an hourglass or a sand timer, when it's turned upside down, the top half drains into the bottom half. All the sand and all the heaviness drain out and fill the bottom half. So once we have that image in our mind, we're going to imagine our body as a sand timer, and we're going to use 3 breaths to empty out all of that heaviness and that congested weight out of our head, our neck, our shoulders, our upper body. Bring it all down into the base, our ground, right onto the earth, so that we can clear the upper hourglass and tune into our breath. So we'll begin. You can do this standing or seated, and you can do it with your eyes opened or closed. And I'm going to close my eyes if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. And everybody, if you're driving down the road, do this later.
Yes. Well, you can do it with your eyes open. You can feel it. Even as you're driving, you can pay attention to everything that's around you.
Okay.
So simply be aware of what's under your body, whether it's a chair or the ground. Once you know what's under your body, take 1 breath just to feel your connection to the support. And then we'll use the next 3 breaths to drain the sand. So bring your awareness to the crown of your head. And on your next exhale, imagine the sand draining down from your crown to your jaw, maybe all the way to your shoulders. Pause and feel your inhale. And then just imagine the sand going down further from your shoulders, down your arms and torso. And feel the inhale expand you. And on your last exhale, all of the heaviness, all of the sand leaves the top half of you down through the navel, the middle of your hourglass, and accumulates in the bottom, close to the ground. All the heaviness is on the earth. And then take a breath, let your clear upper hourglass receive your inhale. As you exhale, let your eyes float open if they're closed. And with the weight close to the ground, just feel the lightness of your head and upper body as you sense the space around you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, this has been so fantastic. I was going to use the word delicious. We'll go with that. This has been such a delicious interview. A few quick wrap-up questions. First off, what advice would you give parents to help their kids today?
You know, that sand timer glass is great for kids. I love the do-over. So that would be offering the opportunity when things are getting rough. Mm-hmm. Instead of telling my son, you know, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. When I'm relaxed and feel my own breath. So I guess that's the number one thing I tell parents is as soon as you feel like you're losing it, do one breath to drop all your sand and take a breath. That's when I respond to my son the best, is getting my own breath. Otherwise, I'm not very nice. So as soon as I get my own breath and I see that I'm not going to respond well to him and he might want to make another choice, I first offer, would you like to say that again? Would you like to do that again? Would you like to make a new choice? More often than not, he does. You know, he takes a poor choice and redoes it. And he's been doing that since he's young, but he's almost 15 and still on the second round making a better choice than the first. And me too. I'm making a better choice too. So I think for parents, number one thing I would do is get your own breath. You'll have more tools, more wisdom, more compassion. Our kids, they usually are responding intensely when they are most uncomfortable. They don't always want to be responding in a way that's a poor choice. They're uncomfortable in one way or another, and it winds up being a bad choice. So the more comfortable we get, the more room to make comfort for them, the better choices they make, and the more opportunity we have to sort of review how we can do it next time.
Woohoo! Thank you. On that note, what personally brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Spending time walking with my family and my dog.
Yay. Yeah. And how is Sunday?
I love Sunday. Sunday is great. Sunday is my gift on the planet, and he makes me remember my softness instantaneously. He is the teacher of softness.
What kind of dog?
He's a cockapoo.
My parents have a cockapoo.
Ah.
Very, very cool. All right. So this Deep Listening, it's a beautiful, beautiful book. We've only scratched the surface here today. Where can people go to find your book and to find out more?
Deep Listening is available wherever books are sold. It's available on the internet, on Amazon, as well as Barnes & Nobles and all of the other bookstores that you might find yourself in.
Fantastic. And do you have a website you want to send people to?
I do. The website is JillianPransky.com. And
how would you spell that for people?
JILLIAN, Pransky, PRANSKY.com, JillianPransky.com.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch JillianPransky.com, come over to InspireNationShow.com and we'll get you over with a lot of emphasis to JillianPransky.com.
Just in time. My 14-year-old just came home. Look at that. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. So on that note, any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today?
A little often equals a lot. That we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect, to get it all done at once. We think there's a finish line, and there's just not.
Thank you so, so much, Jillian. This has been a lot of fun, a true treat. I've so enjoyed this, and I think your book is going to go a long way. I don't think there's anything more important today than softening our hearts and getting back into our bodies and getting grounded, because then we don't spin. We're present with the two of us, we're present with others, and we're present with ourselves.
That's right. That's right. Amen. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you for your shine and your enthusiasm and passion for everything that you're doing and sharing healing with so many from such a heart-centered, true, generous place. Thank you.
It goes both ways. So thank you so, so much.
Yeah.
So got to crank it back up for the finish here. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, I'm touched. Be well, have fun, get deep listening, and begin opening your heart today and shine bright. Woohoo! Woohoo! Thank you so, so much, Jillian.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!